first map, once again, Tyrannical Grievous bursting. And now we're looking to see what the compositions are from these guys. No healer. Will they bring out a healer? And honestly, SunSky, will they bring out a healer as well?
I actually just want to have a moment of silence to see exactly what these comps are going to be. There's no way they don't have a healer. But Kara, I mean, right off the bat, I think we're going to see. Okay, let's see. Oh, they did it. Okay. I don't even want to cast anymore. So we do see the Resto Shaman finally come out of Team No Healer. And as expected, of course, both teams right away are going to skip this trash and head over straight to the first boss.
Yeah, they're going to have a slight advantage because they do have a Rogue, so they can Shroud. They don't have to use their Invis Potion, so they don't have a cooldown of 10 minutes on their Prolonged Power or their Damage Potion. So they have a slight advantage here.
Which is a pretty big deal. I mean, 10 minutes is a lot. Yes. That's like half the dungeon here, right? So, of course, we did discuss in the previous series, but for those just tuning in, the Amalgam of Souls, you know, a few major abilities to watch out for. There's a huge tank frontal, of course, that scythe that you see over on SunSky's team on the big screen right now, just twirling into position. Of course, we'll knock players out of the way, and lastly, we will get those image spawns on the players, as we're seeing in the bottom of the screen there. Anybody who is in that kind of void zone when it explodes will be feared. And then, of course, at 50% Karo, we will have those the boss go to the middle of the room and those spirits spawn on the sides.
Yeah, I actually just noticed they have an Arcane Mage in this one team, which is very interesting because in this dungeon here, you can spell steal a buff and it increases your damage by quite a bit. We will see it later on when a DK, he uses an undead caster to spell steal a buff and it will increase his damage by a lot, and we will see the bosses melt later on.
I believe it's the Arcanist, right? Once they got that increased cast from those Arcane Blasts, so that'll be a big advantage to them indeed. And, you know, just the Arcane Mage alone doing a ton of damage here in the meantime. Amalgam about to hit that 50% mark in just a moment. Now, we don't have that root that we saw earlier from the Resto Druids in the previous series that will be able to root some of those spirits on the outside in order to kind of halt this phase coming up and allow it to go into the 15% area. So we're going to see these teams definitely kill these spirits and probably force that phase one a bit faster.
Yeah, we also see double melee from this one group with their Arcane Mage, which is interesting. I mean, we saw earlier that melee have a hard time, especially later on with the packs when there's archers with random shoots going out. Ranged players can outrange it, but melees have a hard time surviving in this dungeon in general.
Now, they are keeping that one Restless Soul on their side. Now, I'm not 100% sure, but I think one of the souls might actually have leaked on SunSky, which would make this AoE 100% harder. So we'll have to see exactly just how hard it hits in about 15%. SunSky pulling well ahead. I mean, their single target damage is phenomenal compared over to No Healer's side. In the meantime, I mean, even from the damage from the Disc Priest, Jack, don't listen to this, but the damage from the Disc Priest as well, but also the Warlock's damage, at least on No Healer's side, is substantially lower than the damage from the 3 DPS on SunSky's side, Carol.
So if they actually got one buff off, we can see that the soul is still alive. They keep gripping it back and forth so it doesn't actually reach the boss to delay the AoE as much as possible, as the boss does nothing at all in the middle. Now we'll see what happens. All right, okay, so everyone survived.
Everyone almost died.
They do have a lot of AoE cooldowns with the disc bubble and the darkness coming out, of course, and the immunities.
And probably the commanding shout from the warrior, too.
Probably, yeah.
I mean, we did see, I believe, that block from the mage just a bit earlier. No Healer, of course, just now reaching that 15% mark in just a moment. Now, they've already gotten out of their phase. They've already had their explosion. You can see the boss is already meleeing and throwing that frontal around and those sights. Not a very great position there by the tank on No Healer, forcing a lot of the players to have to move out of that frontal cone. In the meantime, SunSky, of course, already defeating the boss, waiting for that RP. So already a pretty substantial gap that's forming between these two teams.
Yeah. Now, obviously, the Blood Decay has still cooldown on their potion because they used the Invis Pot earlier, so he's not going to be able to use Sky Step to pull the whole hallway down. And they're going to have a hard time to pull so much as well, because it's going to be a lot of bursting stacks, and they just blew all of their AoE cooldowns, so they're going to have a hard time surviving if they do a big pull.
And, you know, I would say definitely, well, actually, I don't know, with both teams, they're really not geared as well as some of the teams in the previous series to deal with a huge amount of bursting stacks. I mean, you know, you have that SLT coming in, but it's really not going to save everyone. We did see already the barrier go down from the Disc Priest now, so we know that's not available for at least another 2-point-something minutes. So we're going to have to see exactly what they do. They're all waiting downstairs now, so there definitely will be some kind of I'm bringing you the spiders pull coming up.
Yeah, we can see the DK's out of range. He's going up and pulling all the small spiders down. He does not have Sky Step, as I said, so it's going to be harder for him to pull it off, but he seems to be doing just fine.
Yeah, this is a rather peculiar pull. He's just kind of slowly kiting up by himself. The rest of the DPS are just hanging out downstairs. The Havoc Demon Hunter has come up with him in the meantime, likely to help with some of that Chaos Nova stun that we saw just a moment ago. In the meantime, more traditionally, no healer, all of them going up the stairwell to the spiders right now. The Havoc getting really low, 1% health, barely hangs on, huge absorb, getting nuked onto him from that Disc Priest, barely hangs on to life. The rest of the DPS come up and join him.
Yeah, there's actually a pretty big pull that they're doing here with the Spider, the Patrol, and the Pack. Not as big as Skyline D earlier. They pulled the whole room. That was an impressive pull that we saw from Skyline D.
Yeah, so I mean, relatively safer, but you know, they did kind of do this whole spider pull up the stairs slowly, so I guess a bit of advantage to them there compared to the previous series that we did see. No healer just now kind of moving up the stairwell just around the corner from where our Absorber is just closely following them. Now, we do know, Caro, that there's a ton of dangerous trash here, right? We have the scouts with their AoE, we have the archers that shoot arrows randomly and you'll just all of a sudden, hey, I'm dead, that's great. And then of course we have those commanders, the champions rather, that is really important to interrupt their frontal cast, otherwise they will cast that rallying cry on their group.
Yeah, we can see they're trying to delay the cast from the champion as much as possible with displacements or blanket silences. We can see, well, we can't really see because an Arcane Mage does need to have, like, he needs to be in melee to do the most damage, right? So usually range would go further away because you can outrange the shoot and you can outrange the knife dance and pretty much every ability. You can also line of sight.
So this is the trash that we were alluding to earlier that is important to keep an eye on for the Mage, right? Because this is where the Arcanists will gain their buffs. Now there's an Arcanist. There was one in this pack. It's dead now. There will be one. Actually, did they MC? Oh, no, it's still MC'd. Yes. It's still MC'd. Okay, so the Arcanist is with them right now. You can see it just next to the DK there. It's casting right now. They're buffing it up, and then they're going to release it and let that Mage spell steal and gain a huge amount of stacks, after which I will assume they're going to kind of pull that entire hall and just decimate it.
Yes, you can see the Mage keeps drinking because we have the Fish Feast, which regens the mana very, very fast because spell stealing actually costs a lot of mana, so they need to release to get out of combat, and he keeps drinking and keeps spell stealing the buff.
Yep, so we're going to expect to see the meters absolutely rocked by the Arcane Mage in a moment. In the meantime, still kind of slowly working up the stairs. We do have Team No Heal, taking it nice and slow, but, you know, no deaths from either side right now. They're still just a bit behind Trash, and they're kind of haven't really managed to kind of close this gap that formed on the first boss just yet. And it looks like SunSky is just about getting ready to go. They're going to interrupt that last Arcane Blast. Actually, no, they're not. They're going to let it cast, likely spell steal one more time, and here comes the big damage. Yeah,
it's important to note that usually Blood Decay would enslave the cat instead of the Arcanist, but he's taking...
Oh my god! The Arcane Mage... So, the Arcane Mage has single-handedly disintegrated the entire pack in the area, and I believe the buff carries... Yeah, look at that chunking on Shamalama Ding Dong. I mean, oh my god. So the buff does carry over, which is why they kept the mob in the back so they can keep spell stealing that stack. Ridiculous amount of damage coming in. This whole hall has been single-handedly decimated by the Arcane Mage.
Everything just got deleted.
So they're still slowly working up here. Of course, in the meantime, the Rogue does dip quite low. How do you think they're going to catch up to this?
I think it's going to be very, very difficult to catch up because they're just behind damage-wise, and they're also doing a lot slower pulls compared to the other team because there are no deaths and no wipes and nothing at all. So they're just like straight up slower when it comes to pulls and damage.
Yeah, but it's just one of those things, you know. We do know players at home often do keep a kind of a second monitor open with the tournament to have an idea of where the other team is. So I mean, at this point, they got to kind of feel that heat under their butt. You know, they're going to need to maybe pull outside of their comfort zone to start catching up because this Arcane Mage just, I mean, rock the house there. Now they're moving to this last pack consisting of 1 champion, 2 archers that they'll pretty quickly deal with, and of course then we'll move over to the second boss, Ilisana.
Yeah, so it does take a little bit of time for the Mage to actually stack up his buff, and everyone needs to wait for it. So it does cost a little bit of time, but obviously, as we saw earlier, it's definitely worth it. They're probably going to do it again for the next boss, and we're going to see the boss melt.
Yeah, they did carry it over. I'm pretty sure. Yep, there it is, just on the side. So the Risen Arcanist is along with them. They are all the best of buddies for now. We'll see exactly how it turns out on the boss, but I'm excited. I don't know about you, but I'm excited to see those numbers. So can you tell, what are we expecting on this next boss? You want to tell us a bit about it?
Yeah, so the next boss has 2 important abilities in the first phase, which is the Fell Rush at first. It targets 3 random people, and it charges to all 3 of them and leaves behind a trail. So there's one strategy that most people do where you go really close to the boss and you form a triangle around the boss, and then you all move together at the same time. Because if you don't move instantly, then you get a tick from the Fell Blaze trail on the ground, and it actually takes a lot of damage on Tyrannical especially. Then there's one more ability called a Glaive that gets thrown to a random ranged player. You can actually dodge it, so a Druid, for example, can go Bear form as a 20% chance on dodging it.
Well, of course, a Druid can do it.
Hunters can do it as well. But yeah.
And a Mage
does a lot of
I would
damage.
assume.
Yeah.
So right now we are in Operation Buff the Arcane Mage on Team SunSky in the meantime. And, you know, just falling further and further behind. No healer again. Nice clean play, but nice and safe. 1 pack at a time. Are they dealing with... yeah, they're dealing with the Commander right now. So they've now opened up the gate, and now they're moving to that Commander 2-Archer pack. But let's let's have a look here on what exactly is going to happen to Ilisana. Oh my god. What is going on right now? I'm not even sure at this rate if she's going to reach her second phase. We'll have to keep an eye on this. We do have the Arcane... we do have the Ice Block come out of the Mage there to immune that Brutal Glaive that goes out, as you said earlier. Ilisana absolutely melting. You know, the Warrior's pretty close to the Mage's damage, I would say right now.
Very close, yeah.
Yes, very close. So Ilisana down to 25%. So are they just going to drape this mob through the entire instance? I would assume so at this point. I mean, they're the best of buddies. Finally, we enter the second phase. Ilisana already at 20%.
Yeah, it's a little bit risky to do, because if they do something wrong and they can't enslave the mob anymore, then the whole strategy is gone. But they're doing really well so far, and they still have them up, so it's looking good. But,
you know, the whole strategy's gone, but we saw that the Arcane Mage can kind of hold their own anyways before that point. You know, they did really good damage on the first boss. I mean, it's just insane. Ilisana about to go down here already. We don't even need to talk about the second phase anymore. Down they go. They're going to go up the boulder stairs in just a moment. And in the meantime, I mean, you know... Team No Healer they're doing their best. They got the cat enslaved by the Blood DK just to make sure we don't have a lot of that cleave bleed damage on the group, but they'll be starting Ilisana in the meantime. So now, I mean, if they're keeping that Arcanist, they're probably going to pull the entire hall here, and it's just going to melt again.
It's going to be interesting if they do, because there's going to be a lot of bursting stacks. So they need to survive somehow, because if the DK dies, then his mob is also gone. So they need to make sure to not die.
And we did see that block come up from the Mage already, and here we go. We're doing Operation Charge the Arcane Mage yet again. We'll tune back in there in about 20 seconds, and I assume, you know, don't blink too many times, because if you do, you might miss it, and they might be on the last boss already. Team No Healer, of course, just now having pulled Ilisana at 80%. We'll keep an eye on it. But right now, I mean, I'm not going to lie, there's nothing too exciting going on, but I'm quivering in anticipation about what's about to happen with this Arcane Mage.
I mean, we're going to see probably the whole hallway. I mean, I'm pretty sure at this point they're going to go through and pull everything.
Oh, God, here it goes. Yep. There's the Sky Step. So they go around picking up all of the Blade Lords, of course. Now, it is really dangerous, though. There's a lot of damage going out here, and especially on the tank with that Brutal Assault. You got to make sure you're interrupting it at the right time, which is after the cast during the beginning of the channel. Here we go, Operation Arcane Mage. Actually, everybody, though. Jesus.
Yeah. They also used Bloodlust here.
And did they? Yeah, okay. So huge amounts of damage going down in the group. They're trying to keep everyone as long as possible. They're all going to get eventually one shot by the Blade Lords are alive. Everybody survives all of the bursting stacks. Grievous is healed back up, and you know what? It wasn't even the Arcane Mage that was on top in the end. Yeah, just everybody.
That was really well done. It might have happened that he missed the buff or he lost the buff. Sometimes it happens. You have to time it very correctly to keep the buff. So maybe it actually didn't work out, but it didn't need to, because the other two did so much damage. Yeah.
They carried anyway. So now we see the Disc Priest, of course, running to the top of the steps. Only once the first player reaches the top of the steps will these boulders stop and, you know, not run any players over, such as Rich himself. Once they get to the top here. Now, there's a few different ways, Nagura, that teams do this kind of gauntlet. You know, a lot of teams kind of pull everything into the boss room. We did see the previous two teams, they did pull everything, but they kind of stopped in that hallway where the bats were caving in so that they can pull some of the bats over to the boss. And of course, some teams play it safe. They do, you know, maybe 2 pulls. So what do you think we're going to see here?
I mean, with SunSky, we're definitely going to see the whole pull, as the Mage is already charging up his buff. It is a little bit risky to pull everything, especially because of the sick bats that fixates random players. And they do have 2 delays.
He knows he doesn't have anything to do right now, so here we go, though, as you were saying.
Okay, so they're going up with Sky Step Potion. They're probably pulling everything into the boss room. You know what? Maybe they pull the boss, too.
Is anybody really going to benefit from that? I guess maybe the Arcane. No, it looks like they stopped exactly what the other 2 teams did. So we're going to see some big damage coming out of everybody again. Everybody's CDs are probably back, or most of their CDs are probably, well, we know the Warriors are. They have very short CDs. Most of these CDs are back up. The mobs just melt. I mean, It's not even impressive anymore. They just do it to everything. Everything burns down. They're going to pick up the last bit of bats coming up. A couple of sick bat debuffs going out, but there's only 3 bats, so it's no problem for the healer to just heal through. They'll be going over into Smash Spite's room in just a moment. And I mean, you know, checking in on no healer, you know, they're doing well too. They're taking it nice and safe. They just now finished the second boss. So everything we just talked about, they will now have to do in, I would assume, a slower fashion. They don't have this kind of Arcane Mage pumping. But to be fair, you know, as much love as we're giving the Arcane Mage, and obviously he did destroy the second boss and the second boss trash, it really was also the Havoc and the Arms Warrior that carried a lot of the trash coming up to here. Yeah,
they definitely did a lot of AoE damage. Both of them melee did really well. And we also have to consider that they have to play the Mage in the next 2 dungeons as well. So maybe the Mage is not going to be as good in the other 2 dungeons as he is in Black Rook Hold.
True, but they do have the opportunity, if needed, to swap to Fire.
Mage,
yeah. So assuming he can play different specs, you know, they will have that opportunity. So here we go once again. The Arcanist building up those stacks. We hear those spell steals going off for the Arcane Mage. We're going to have a little bit of a drink right before the boss, and then they're just going to hit it hard. Now, they don't have Lust on this boss. In fact, they're probably not going to have Bloodlust for the rest of the dungeon at this point, at this pace.
The Mage does have Bloodlust, so that's all that matters anyway.
Oh, true, because of the ring. Yeah, that's absolutely right. And that is probably all that matters, actually. Absolutely right. In the meantime, no healer, of course, moving around the corner. They're just preparing to do that big pull with all the Blade Lords there themselves. We'll have to keep an eye on how they perform there. They won't, I don't think they'll have just as much damage in terms of AoE burst as SunSky did. So hopefully they perform cleanly as well. Smash Spite now being pulled. We're likely going to, yeah, there it goes. Okay. So once again, Smash Spite. Oh my goodness. This is, what is this? Is this an alpha patch right now? What's going? Is this tuned properly? So once again, Smash Spite going down the rabbit hole. I mean, in the meantime, no healer's doing really well too.
They did do a really big pull. They did pull the whole hallway.
And they did well as well.
Yes.
So they have only 2 of the Blade Lords left. A lot of damage going out. Ooh, we do have that perk proc, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, the tank does go down. Now, 2 of them go down. They do have a bit of those Blade Lords left over, so hopefully they can clean that up without having a reset on them. In the meantime, Team SunSky Arcane Mage doing a ton of damage to Smash Spite.
I didn't know you can 2-man dungeons.
I mean, so... I mean, could you have just brought 2 Arcane Mages, right? And another DK, technically? I mean, that's like, you're not going to do that, right? Because there's class lock, but I mean, you could just get ridiculous for this dungeon specifically. Nonetheless, Smash Spite about to go down 13%. Looks like the Mage has slowed down a bit. Presumably the buffs at this point have worn off. And I would assume that, I mean, why not? They're going to just keep this Arcanist all the way upstairs to the next boss.
Yes, they will.
I'm kind of speechless, I'm not going to lie. So no healer now. They did recover. They didn't have a full wipe from that trash pull. They're going over to the stairwell where the boulders are. Certainly don't want to be run over there. Smash Spite 2%. They'll go down in a moment for SunSky. I mean, at this point, only a wipe, maybe even 2 or 3 wipes is going to put no healer back in favor to win this match. Smash Spite finally goes down, and I would assume, Kara, that they're going to probably pull this entire hallway up towards Dentelia next.
Yes, that's what we most likely are going to see. And the maps are not a huge problem as long as you dodge this jump on the floor so you don't get stunned. And the tank obviously gets a lot of damage too. They're charging up the Mage again, and it's probably going to destroy everything again.
Yes, so there's a bit of danger on this trash pack. As you said, those Raven's dives do need to be avoided. It is a 5-second stun, and it doesn't DR, so if you get caught in a chain, I mean, you're just there forever. But also on the tank, we do have that coup de grace. Did I say that right?
Yes.
We do have that coup de grace that does hit quite hard. It's a very lengthy cast, but because it's such a lengthy cast, it's more than enough preparation time for that DK to get Vamp Blood, maybe an IBF, whatever they may need. So it looks like they're Sky stepping up. They're going to grab everything, and we're probably going to see Team Arcane Mage blowing it up yet again. We do see, of course, here that they're finishing up. Oh, see, they did actually do a safer pull, no healer. We talked about that kind of the gauntlet pull. So they did manage to actually pull only one of the Dominators, and then I think they're going to pull everything else up to the boss.
All right. The warrior actually died, but he did all his damage already, so I guess it wasn't a big deal. They're going to finish this off without problems, and it's going to be fun. They got to be careful with the bursting stacks, though.
Yeah, true. And the Arcane Mage actually didn't do as much as I thought there.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure.
So Arcane Mages don't do a lot of AoE in general compared to like a Fire Mage or something.
Well, I mean, we did see that that second trash before the second boss where he absolutely decimated the entire hall by himself. So I'm not really sure what the difference there and now is between perhaps maybe he didn't get enough stacks or maybe he got stunned too, actually. Could have been anything. We are moving on to the last boss. So we do have 2 phases in this boss. So why don't you tell us a bit about this one?
Okay, so in the first phase, you have a random AoE going through the room that you need to dodge. Then you have the blades that target random players that also, like, you need to position yourself properly so the blade doesn't go through the whole room because they persist for quite a long time. And then as we go into phase 2 where the actual boss spawns, there's 2 abilities that are pretty important. One is a Shadow Bolt volley that hits the whole group, and then there's swarms that get attached to players that stun you for a short duration and also do a lot of damage, especially on Tyrannical. And then the very important thing is that there's a buff that gets applied to the whole group after the first Shadow Bolt volley that increases your HP, your damage done, and your healing. So if someone dies to the very first Shadow Bolt volley before you have the buff, then you need to rest him immediately, because if you rest him afterwards, then you won't have the buff, and then you're gonna die to every volley.
And let's just have a moment of silence here to appreciate what's happening right now. Okay, so we're already moving on to the second phase of the fight. Now, by the time we actually enter the second phase, of course, the buffs will be gone from the Arcane Mage. So they spend a bit of time there just to make sure they get to that second phase. So as you mentioned, though, the most dangerous part in this fight is that AoE Shadow Bolt volley before the buffs are applied, because the second phase, the Intellion Axe of this entire boss fight, is tuned around having that buff. So that very first round of AoE Shadow Bolt volley is hitting players as if they were to have that buff, but they don't yet. So we're probably gonna see the barrier go down, you know, rallying cry, everything going down. There it is right now. Everyone survives, no problem. Now they'll get their buff. You see it, there we are on the raid frames, and now it's just a matter of grinding the boss down.
Yeah, I'm actually impressed that the Mage did not even ice block. He was probably saving it for a swarm later on, or maybe he didn't have it at all.
Yeah, it's possible, but I mean, yeah.
He dropped really low.
He dropped pretty low. I guess, you know, they probably practiced this a lot, knowing that it was one of the set dungeons, so I guess they knew exactly what they were in for. In the meantime, of course, no healer, not to ignore them. Of course, they are working on Smash Spike quite well. It's gone quite smooth for them, but they have taken it way too slowly and way too safely. But, you know, that is to say, I mean, they played so much with this Arcane Mage, SunSky did, that even if no healer were to pull more risky, I mean, how much riskier would they need to pull to even catch up to this?
Yeah.
Would they even be able to?
Yeah, I think no heal probably practiced a lot for their 40 PS comp in the first round, and maybe their Shaman is just not too comfortable in his Resto Shaman to pull or to do as big pulls as SunSky did.
Yeah, no, absolutely. A lot of chunking damage going on there from Team 14 SunSky, of course, with those AoE Shadow Bolt volleys. They still hit very hard. I mean, this is a 23 Tyrannical right now, so lots to watch out for. The Warrior dipping really low, already at 4 stacks, having a lot of trouble getting out of the Grievous stacks from some of these players for the Priest right now. Of course, the Arcanist is back out. I'm not sure if they're stealing buffs on purpose or they've just lost control of it entirely. I
think they just lost control at this point. It's actually casting on random players.
Yeah, okay, so they'll have to be careful with that, and they do need to kill it, of course, because they're missing that 1% for trash. Smash Spite in the meantime at 30% for Team No Healer. Intellion Axe, they're just giving it their all to try and kill him before he enters another Deathlord's Guile.
I think they'll manage. It's still going to be a while until he goes down, so, and dots also keep ticking, so I think they got it.
And that's that. Team SunSky with a dominating performance, thanks to that Arcane Mage. Hey, you know what? I mean, look, I give credit where credit's due. The Arcane Mage performed really well. Oh, they did get the final phase. We spoke too soon. Oh, well, I'm not standing back up. I'm keeping on sitting down. I'm pretty sure they'll get this. The Warrior does go down, though, but they're in a very safe position right now. I mean, they just need to sneeze on the boss when he spawns, and they're good to go.
They're not even resting him.
Nah, how embarrassing.
Well, I mean, he did hold his weight at some point. Some of the pulls the Mage didn't seem to take over, but definitely a convincing Free Marcy were able to take the MDI last year. Maybe China can do something this year, upset the odds a little bit, but we are ready to head into Cathedral of Eternal Night now. I think this is something that's very cool. We've seen every single dungeon, basically a new dungeon every single time, locked out from these teams, but we are ready to take it away. Discipline Priest versus an Elemental Shaman. Ooh la la.
They are actually going with they're going back to their team of no heal. They're sticking true to their name, Nagura. So we'll have to see how that turns out. I mean, you know, there's not anything really too testing if they play carefully and deal properly with everything. You know, they don't have that pressure from Grievous or bursting on this map right now. We're dealing with Sanguine, and we're dealing with, of course, the explosives. So as long as they kind of stay on top of everything, technically they should be okay, but there's a bit of scariness coming in, especially with some of the later bosses with some of that pulsing AoE damage.
Yeah, especially the last boss does quite a lot of AoE. It is fortified though, so it is probably handleable, but it is an elemental shaman, and an elemental shaman doesn't actually have a lot of self-healing or defensives going on. That's why we don't see a lot of elemental shaman.
Yeah, I mean, part of their success with the previous 4 DPS maps that we saw in their previous series was the survivability of those demon hunters, and of course, you know, the rogue and the warlock, obviously the blood DK. But yeah, that elemental shaman is going to have a bit of a struggle, especially during that phase. But nonetheless, we have a while to go before we get to that point. Both teams dealing with that mini boss. Dual Zac, of course, SunSky already going past it. They're getting ready to pull some of those patrols with those Fellhounds, whilst in the meantime, no healer dealing with Dual Zac as we speak.
I think Elemental Shaman is actually quite good at killing explosives, now that we talked about it. And yeah, maybe they have an easy time killing them, especially with the Warlock also gaining damage.
The Rogue already died. Yeah, we just had the Rogue die already, so 1 death on the board, 5 seconds. Elemental Shaman are very good at dealing with those explosive and they're good with AoE burst damage, but they're also good at dying to a lot of mechanics that other classes wouldn't in the scenario of no healers at the moment. So again, I mean, you just keep saying it, I keep thinking about it. We're gonna have to see. We have another. Oh, that was actually. I thought he died for a second, but the Arcane. Actually, he did switch to Fire as
Fire Mage, yes.
So it is now a Fire Mage. He got so low there. I mean, like I thought he died. I was about to announce a death, but no death nonetheless. So did you keep trekking for a pretty big pull here, though?
Yeah, that was actually a really big pull. Yeah. Actually, no one is abusing the bubble here for the haste. It is fortified, and the bubble does a lot of damage. It actually got changed, so it scales with the level now. It's probably going to hurt a lot if you stand in it. And those mobs do a lot of damage in general, as we see those Fellhounds jumping around. We see the healer actually die to one of those jumps, as the Fellhounds jump to the furthest target away and cast an AoE fear. But the jump does a lot of damage, especially on fortified, so we saw the healer actually go down.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to have to find out who let those dogs out a bit later, but the healer does release and is running back desperately. We do see the Mage drop as well, unfortunately. That's another 5 seconds on the board for them. So while they will be able to clean up this pull, it was definitely a bit sloppy. Keep in mind, we do have Sanguine now. Not the most dangerous affix, but certainly a bit of a pain in the butt in terms of having to constantly kite mobs, grip them out of those pools. Those pools, of course, for those at home, of course, do damage to players standing in them and also heal mobs that stand in them, so you constantly want to be moving around in the meantime. No healer in the meantime, of course, moving in the same part of the hall.
I think no healer, actually, that's why it took them so long to kill those that first trash pack. I think the mini-boss actually stood still and casted a Shadow Wave as the mobs died and healed himself up. That's why it took them so long to kill that mini-boss.
Oh, that's devastating, too, because the healing from the Sanguine, of course, is percent HP. So if there's a mob with a massive health pool, could even be a boss that stands in that Sanguine, it'll take a huge amount of health back. Now, we do see what is commonly seen from teams these days in the Cathedral runs, the Invis past these 2 packs of trash, 2 to 3 packs of trash, depending which ones they decide to skip, but certainly that last one there, they will appear back on their stairwell and pull that 3-pack in that doorway.
Yeah, so we used a lot of Invis potions here. It's interesting because most people actually manage to have a druid sell through, or just a healer use the Invis potion, everyone else die, and then you can rest everyone up. The tank actually died. I'm not sure if it was to reset something or if they actually.
I think it might have been on purpose. I think the tank actually might have pulled to the side there and then get rest upstairs. Now the remainder of the team, of course, is cut off by this incredibly slow patrolling Walker, aptly named Walker, not Runner. So they are very slowly moving past, after which they have res the tank on the other side. They're going upstairs, and now we're coming over to Agronox's room, the very first boss of the dungeon. There's a lot of dangerous trash in here, especially with those flowers that kind of chain onto players.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if they do a very, very big pull and just pop all their colas and try to blow everything up. But if they do one mistake or they don't interrupt one of the abilities, there are very, very scary abilities here in this trash. There's roots that pulls you in. There's a cast that if you don't interrupt it, it's like a rain, an AoE on the whole group that can kill you very easily. There's also heals going on, a lot of things to interrupt.
So the Shaman does end up going down, unfortunately, on Team No Healer. So just that survivability element versus the other 4 classes in the group coming through here. So we do see a fairly sizable pull, one of the double pack plus the pat coming in from SunSky here. And as you mentioned, if they wipe here, it's absolutely devastating. There's no checkpoint yet. They'd have to go all the way back to the beginning of the dungeon, and they already invis past the trash, so they'd have to pull the trash. The first checkpoint comes in after you kill this first boss.
Exactly. You see, No Heal is actually going quite a bit slower than the other team. Now I'm wondering, as we saw the other team invis through 1 pack and then actually have the tank die, I wonder why they didn't just have everyone die and had the healer invis through and rest him on top. then I think it would have actually saved them a lot of time.
Yeah, because of the pot CD, they wouldn't have had to use that 10-minute CD. You're absolutely right. So
and that's a rest anyways.
Yeah, no, you have a very good point there. Pulling up the rest of the trash here. Now, they want to kind of be careful where they kill this trash because of the Sanguine. Teams typically like to pull Agronox over towards this stage area so they can deal with the flowers that he spawns a bit later. So you can see they're kind of pulling them a bit to the side to make sure that they have space for Agronox, which I presume they'll pull it to, but, you know, maybe they won't. We'll see in a moment. In the meantime, of course, still dealing with trash downstairs. Team no healer, still going at it. They're only one death behind, but as you said, they're moving really, really slow. I mean, they have to, you know, they have to, like, take it really, really carefully. The Shaman, unfortunately, going down again. Not, actually, did he onk there? Yeah, I believe he actually...
I believe so.
Yeah, so he used his onk there. Not going to have that available for another 30 minutes, if I'm not mistaken. The Vilebark Walker going down in just a moment, and in a moment, they will be pulling Agronox here.
I think one interesting thing to notice is that they actually did not skip the trash, so they're actually going to be ahead in percentage. And it looks like they're looks like SunSky is quite a bit ahead, but it's really not because the other team pulled way more trash.
Okay, you're absolutely well. Yeah, no, you're right. They still have to deal with the upstairs trash,
exactly.
So that they will eventually catch up, absolutely. They just don't have the same... I mean, they can't do a lot of these tricks where you kind of, you know, the tank pulls it out of the way. A DPS is likely to die if there's not a healer there to save them, so they definitely have to play a bit tighter. In the meantime, of course, Agronox has been aggroed at the top of the screen for you, of course, with SunSky, our resident tree boss in the dungeon. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb here and assume that they pulled the boss to where he is in order to kind of get all the flowers within range, because they do spawn on either side of the room here. We have 2 sets of 5 flowers that spawn. They do fixate the players, and if they reach the players, pop, they're going to kill them on the spot. So you want to make sure that you're ranged usually, and you're no stranger to this, is the one killing the flowers.
Yeah, we only have one ranged in SunSky, so he's going to have to deal with most of them. They can grip them together, stun them, and nuke them down as well, but they got to be very careful with that grip so none of the melee players actually gets hit.
Absolutely. So they do a good job there. They actually AoE grip all the flowers in, AoE stun them, and finish them off just on the spot. Now, one of the most dangerous aspects of this fight is not even Agronox himself, who does do this kind of increasing pulsing damage on the raid. You can see that kind of little mushroom icon. It now reaches 4th stack, does go up to 5, but it's also actually that succulent lasher that is spawned under the boss. It actually melees harder than the boss on the tank and does that kind of secretion explosion that you want to kind of just, as soon as it spawns, you stun it, everyone turns to it and kills it.
Yeah, it keeps casting this one ability that you need to to have a displacement to interrupt it, and usually you want to have a rotation of stuns or typhoons or knockbacks to interrupt it so the tank doesn't die.
Yep, so they have dealt with both sides of the flowers. One last succulent lasher there. I assume that they're going to kill it off. Yeah, they're going to kill that last one off. If one more spawns, they're probably just going to off-tank it in the meantime. Once they do kill Agronox, as we mentioned, they will be able to get the checkpoint here. So should any player die, especially after this boss room, quickly after this boss room, they'll probably just res and run back up. In the meantime, of course, no healer finally reaching Agronox's room. Cleaning up the rest of the trash. They've actually moved quite quickly through this trash room right now, and they'll soon also pull Agronox.
Yeah, so they're quite a bit ahead in percentage. They do have a Rook, so I assume that they're going to skip something later on with Shroud. I would assume at the very end when there's a mini-boss in front of the last 2 bosses, because that trash is actually quite difficult to deal with. Indeed
it is. So they're going to wait for the pat here, as most players do on live servers that we see. They want to just kind of jump over that ledge and head right up the stairs in a moment, where we're going to start getting towards the second boss of the dungeon. We're going to have a lot of those kind of book throwers and, of course, the imps as well that need to be interrupted, pulled. Now, there's a lot of casters here and a lot of mobs that kind of move very slowly, and we do have that Sanguine combination, so they're gonna have to, and we don't have the lovely Boomkin beam here, which is actually really helpful on this trash.
Yeah, okay, so all those imps, if they get a cast through at the same time, it actually does a lot of damage, as it is fortified as well. So we'll see if they have a mass grip, if they pull everything together. Oh, it seems like they only pull one side. Maybe they do a big pull inside the room and actually pull a lot of goblins.
I actually don't think they pulled either side. There's 2 imps that patrol between the 2 sides. They just went straight up the middle, pulled those 2 imps into the next room, and as you said, they pulled a massive amount of imps into the middle there, and they're gonna have to make sure to use their Blood Elf silences, and oh, that's a lot of damage up on the raid, and they pull Gazer Axe, excuse me, as well. Now you want to make sure you avoid that swirl on the ground. That is a one-shot, especially in this fortified setting.
Yeah, so this mini-boss does one important ability where you have to turn around. If you don't turn around, you're most likely dead.
Yeah, and then it does a ton of pulsing damage on the raid. Now, if I'm not mistaken, you can technically outrange that, but it is so far that you can't DPS either, so it's either kind of outrange it, don't do DPS, or you do DPS. I think a Moonkin might be able to be in range, and maybe a Hunter, but not some of the other range specs. Nonetheless, they are all well within range. They're barely keeping up with those Fel Explosives, so we want to make sure those don't explode. Those are about 50% max HP on the raid, so even the DH peeling off, making sure they're dead, and then coming back in to DPS Gaze or X.
It's also difficult because if you do outrange, if one player outranges, then the other team, like everyone else, gets more damage by it. So it's kind of scary if one outranges and everyone else is taking more damage.
And I mean, look, we got to give credit where credit's due right now. Agronex falls over for Team No Healer. They did, I mean, they did quick work of him. A lot of damage coming in from that Elemental Shaman because of all that chain lightning from those ads coming in. I mean, just they moved through that really quickly. Now, the death differential isn't too bad right now. Only 2 deaths between the 2 teams. And honestly, it seems like Team No Healer is kind of slowly starting to catch up here. They're probably going to decimate this next room, which is consisting of just a ton of small mobs, as we saw.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see if they actually pull the whole room as SunSky did, because if they do, then they're gonna catch up percentage-wise, and they're actually gonna be ahead.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So they do pull one of the side of him. They're taking it a bit slower. We'll see if they pull everything else together after. Now, the DK did not use Gorfian's Grasp, the AoE grip. He only gripped one of the imps closer in. They're kind of AoEing everything together. We do see a bit of a punt there, likely from that Thunderstorm from the Shaman, and then likely they will be going into the next room. And I wouldn't be shocked, as you said, to see that huge AoE grip in the next room. In the meantime, SunSky dealing with the bit of trash around the remainder of the room prior to pulling the second boss.
It's gonna be scary with the mini-boss, as they don't have a healer, right? So the AoE after the turnaround is actually gonna be quite intense.
And he's actually quite close there. Yeah. I don't think they want to pull him right now. It doesn't look like that would be their intent, but they are nuking it. And, you know, this Elemental Shaman is putting out a lot of damage. I mean, like a substantial amount of damage on their AoE packs. Pretty frequently too. I mean, it's not just like a every 3 minutes kind of deal. Nonetheless, SunSky moving over to the second boss. I'm a bit worried about where they decided to put their Sanguine on the side, because this boss does throw the weapon down and then kind of do a charge out to the edges. So if they make him charge too far and throw him one of the bookcases, he could maybe get a tick of one of those Sanguine. Pretty far-fetched, but they have to be careful in which bookshit they direct him in. So tell us a bit about this boss.
Okay, so this boss does a charge on a random player. You can immune it, which they don't actually have that many immunities here. I mean, they do have the Mage who can block. I'm not sure if the Demon Hunter is running the immunity or not, but if you can't immune it, they also don't have a Holy Paladin. Bob helps as well, so this priest unfortunately doesn't have that. So you have to go behind a bookshelf, as you see there. If a bookshelf gets destroyed, then it spawns 2 ads that need to be dealt with. They cast something that needs to be interrupted. It's depending on which bookshelf you charge into, there's different mobs that spawn. If a cast goes through, there's some nasty... We saw the whole group just had the slow debuff on them, which can be difficult because he does an AoE around him that if you stand inside it, you're going to die. So if you're slow, then you're melee and you're not mobile, then you might actually not be able to get out of it.
Now, there's a bit of a trick here that this team did as well that I've been seeing players lately do. You don't actually have to go behind the bookcase. You could actually hug into the bookcase in the front of it, and the boss will actually impact the bookcase before the player, and then they'll be safe, so it doesn't have to, you know, run as far. You don't have to run as far. You get a bit of extra damage in. There go the books. The boss dies quite promptly, and then moving on, of course, we have this massive imp pull here, which is not dangerous because about 90% of those imps go away, but they do spawn explosive orbs on their way out.
Oh, yeah. We're probably going to see them line of sight the explosive orb on the pull. Some teams, well, at least on live service, people forget about it. They go in, see a million explosive orbs, and then they die. But yeah, if everyone stands outside here and just waits for the pull and waits for the imps to go and just waits until everything is exploded, then it's going to be safe.
So we were talking about for Team No Healer, how are they going to deal with Gazerax? It looks like, it actually looks like the Elemental Shaman just got the hell out of there.
Yeah.
Ranged it completely, no damage in on the Elemental. They finish off Gazerax, and now they are also rearing to pull up. In the meantime, here, of course, we're seeing a lot of damage coming out from some of these mobs and the explosives for SunSky. The Disc Priest does go down, but of course, we do have a checkpoint now in the second boss's room, so they're able to just res up right away, not waste that battle res, and get right back into the thick of things. Yeah,
so they actually did not line of sight. They just all charged in and they weed them down. We saw a lot of explosives go off, and I'm pretty sure the Disc Priest died to the explosions. Everyone else is quite a bit of defensive cooldowns, while a Disc Priest is a little bit more squishy, so he ended up dying, but as you said, there's a checkpoint, so they didn't lose too much time.
Well, we still have Cauterize on CD for that Mage, so we're going to have to keep an eye on that. Now, moving upstairs, we're having kind of, we are in a fortified setting, and we're having that really dangerous portion of the dungeon come up with the kind of Spider Queen coming up and all those spiders. Now, we have a couple more pulls before that. We'll see exactly what they have to pull, and they don't have to pull much at all. I mean, they're already at 90%, keeping in mind that we do have the percentage from those 4 bats between the 3rd and 4th boss, which we'll get to a bit later. But they do pull typically, obviously they need to pull the patrol up there to one of the sides with the small spiders. They'll easily hit the percentage they need here.
Yeah, so we see them pull the 3 mobs down, which are actually quite scary because they keep casting an orb that goes into a random direction, and it does probably one-shot you if you get hit by it. But if you stand up the stairs, then it actually goes through, like goes underneath you, and you don't get hit. So you're totally safe if you stand outside. So only the melees have to be careful about it.
Very true. So it has no Z-axis. The second boss already dead for Team No Healers. I mean, they're just burning through it. So as you said, of course, they do start the event here. They pull the imps and immediately LOS those orbs to make sure that they don't all die right away. Moving up here in a moment, you'll see that there's a lot of poison stacks on the tank, stacking up to 5. It does a ton of damage now. Anybody can dispel poisons will obviously have to dispel it, but they don't have a paladin tank, they don't have a druid, they don't have a paladin, they don't have a monk right now, so nobody that could dispel those stacks off of that blood DK. So that's just a ton that they're going to have to heal through at the moment. It's probably going to be problematic for Team No Healer as well. But coming up here, we're going to have this kind of Spider Queen that starts with 3 spiders, and then periodically will spawn another 3 as the fight goes longer and longer.
Yeah, as you said, the spiders apply this poison debuff for every melee attack, so you got to be careful to not pull aggro as well, especially the group without a healer. If a DPS pulls aggro and gets a poison stack without the dispel in their group at all, it's going to be very, very difficult for them to deal with that.
Right, and of course, you do want to make sure, so they're moving up. Yeah, so Team No Healer moving up right now. Are they pulling everything? No, they're not. Okay, they're not pulling everything with her. So you want to make sure also that you're not too far away from Nalasha right now, because she will blink to one of the far players, and then she does that kind of huge frontal cone. So the closer she is when she blinks, as we see here, the easier it is for players who are then slowed to kind of go around safely to the sides and not get nuked. They actually end up pulling everything together here.
Wow.
Likely they're popping everything. That blood DK is barely holding on there. Manages to get a heal off. In the meantime, the Shaman is about to go down to health yo-yoing up and down right now. They're barely holding on. The Shaman finally does go down. The blood DK does manage to stabilize, but there's just orbs going off everywhere. Tons of damage going out. Spiders going down. It looks like this is likely going to be a wipe. They're not able to stabilize with all those orbs going out. Yeah, so the tank goes down. Everybody goes down. It's going to be a full wipe for Team No Healer. They'll have to release at that second boss checkpoint. In the meantime, of course, SunSky looking very stable.
Yeah, I wonder if this was actually an intentional pull, or if they realized that they're behind and that they have to risk something. But this looked like a crazy pull, especially without a healer. I feel like the Shaman actually pulled aggro. Maybe he damaged a little bit too early and had a poison stack because he kept ticking down until he eventually died.
It did look a bit weird because they kind of pulled the spiders on the bridge first and then like DPS them for a bit and then pulled like Nalasha. So it might have been an accident. The DK getting so low already again, dies again. Of course, I'm not. They actually do have the battle res available, but they opt not to use it at the moment. They're not managing to kill everything.
He's the only one with a battle rest, so...
No, they have the Warlock as well.
Oh, they do have a Warlock. Oh, yeah, true.
But they're probably in a fight in real life right now, so you're probably opting not to help his buddy out. We do have another death, and I mean, this is getting really messy. And this is, I guess, that impasse that we were expecting. This is just one of those limits that you kind of need a healer here, and it's just not working out so well for them. SunSky, in the meantime, of course, moving on to Domitrax. So why don't you tell us a bit about that?
Okay, so whenever the boss reaches 90% HP, he spawns 2 portals. The portals do have a cast, and you need to kill the portal before the cast goes through. It spawns, the very 2 portals, they spawn imps outside, and you need to kill the imps or interrupt them because they cast a firebolt on random players. It does quite a lot of damage. Then the boss has a big AoE ability that he casts right now, where everyone needs to hide inside the shield. That reduces damage taken and damage done, so you don't want to stand inside the shield all the time. The boss also casts a cleave that the tank needs to not pull into the shield because it actually removes HP off the shield. And then he will also cast another set of portals when he's on 40%? 50%.
Yep.
So you want to time the 50% properly, that you don't push him right before he does an AoE, because you don't want to hide inside the portal, inside the shield, while the portals are up.
Especially because from the first set of portals, we do know that the imps come out, which do a lot of damage, but they're easier to handle. You just interrupt the tanks or have them. Now, the second set of portals contains much more dangerous mobs. You do have those mistresses come out that you can, of course, grab aggro as a tank, but they'll occasionally do this kind of shadow whirlwind that will punt players away. So if you have to hide in the portal while he's doing his AoE and then the mistresses come in, well, you know, that's going to spell disaster. Somebody's going to get punted out of the middle there if the tank can't survive on their own on the outside. Doing a good job there to drag the boss over to the portals and cleave them down. And not too far from now, you know, they're really going to have to deal either with those mistresses, CCing them, stunning them, and then hiding while they stun them, or just making sure they're dead. But here's the chaotic energy now.
Yeah, we see the other team is still struggling on the same pool. They died quite a few times now. They have 19 deaths. I think it's just that pool that is it's just too difficult for them without a healer.
I mean, it's just... Nalasha is just the queen of spiders. It's very dangerous. You know, she used to work as a web designer before this, but apparently her job as one of the mini bosses in this dungeon is actually working quite well. In the meantime, Domitrax, they do well, as I alluded to earlier. They do Chaos Nova stun those mobs prior to hiding from that during that chaotic energy, finish off the mistresses, and they should have no problem finishing this boss off now.
No problem at all. They also, they're going to be 4 bats after this boss that they kill will finish their percentage, their trash percentage, and then they're into the last boss. And as I said, the last boss does quite a lot of AoE damage, but they do have a healer, and it is fortified, so in theory, they shouldn't have problems with it.
Do you think Disc Priest suffers on that boss a bit, especially in the second phase with some of those mobs that I know Jack's not here to comment on this right now, but perhaps not. I mean, I would say maybe a Resto Druid would be perhaps a stronger choice in that second phase, at least from what I see teams play. But again, in general, Disc Priest is pretty atypical, but you know what? And this is what we talk about China region all the time. They have some really atypical picks that we're not used to seeing in, you know, the NA and EU region, but they just make it work so well.
I think Team No-Heal actually managed to get the trash down in the mini-boss, and they're gonna, well, they're still pretty far behind. They're one whole boss behind, and they still need a little bit of trash, so it's gonna be difficult for them.
I won't mention the 17 death differential if you don't, so we'll have to focus on that one later. But now, of course, the group of 4 bats coming down in the moment for SunSky. They clean it up, no problem, and then we will, in a moment, see the last boss, Mephistroth, that will spawn in just a moment. And as you said, he has an energy bar. Once it reaches 100% energy, he will disappear into the shadows, and occasionally he will spawn images of himself, which will shoot shadow bolts at Illidan in the middle of the room. The tank, of course, is the one responsible for protecting Illidan in the meantime. But it actually seems like the Mage has the shield buff at the moment. Not sure on that one. We'll have to keep an eye on it.
Yeah.
I've never seen DPS do it.
That would be weird, yes.
That would be weird.
I've never seen that before.
You can actually drop the shield during the fight, so maybe they're just going to do it later. I'm not sure.
Maybe.
I wonder if you can use the shield for some of the abilities in the first phase. Nonetheless, we'll see in a moment. But before that first phase, there are some other abilities we have to watch out for in the first phase.
Yeah, so there's those broken windows that we see where bats are flying through that spawn swirlies underground that you do need to dodge. We see the big ability here, the ability that spawns 2 big circles that get applied to 2 random ranged players. You have to spawn them outside, and once they do spawn, they actually do quite a bit of AoE damage to the whole group that needs to be healed up. It is fortified, so we didn't see them drop very, very low, but it is something to heal. And there's also a splash damage going out on random players, so everyone needs to be spread out. If you stand too close to each other, then you will damage each other.
Of course, and the tank also gets that kind of frontal carrion swarm that does leave a permanent pool on the ground. The effects on the ground really don't damage too hard. It's the frontal itself that does, so the tanks often layer it over each other as to avoid taking up too much space in the area. Now we do start this phase, and we'll have to keep an eye on exactly who is using. So Illidan gets hit right there. They do trade the shield off to the Blood DK, but way too late. So every time one of these orbs connects with Illidan, it extends this phase by about 4 seconds. And the longer the phase goes on, the higher the damage stacks on the group, and the harder it is to get out of the phase. Now, you don't have to technically kill these images, but the more images there are, the more balls that are going out, and it's quite hard for the tank to juggle all these balls.
Yeah, so in theory here, as a DPS, you want to kill one side of as they spawn randomly those shadowy apparition. The healer actually died. They do have 2 battle rests, so they should get him up here. Hopefully they can recover.
The problem is the only battle rest was actually the DK, so he was in the middle of defending, so there was kind of sketchy. They pulled it off, but he had to res on top of defending, so it could have gone bad there.
But they managed to recover. No one else died. It seems to be that everything is well. So in the other group, we actually see them wipe on the boss. Wow. Okay, so they're actually struggling a lot in this dungeon now.
That is quite a parade of bad guys coming in. 27 deaths over 4 Team No Healer. It looks like Team No Healer will be going likely down to the lower bracket later, and we'll have to perhaps reassess some of their plans on these dungeons. Team SunSky looking like a nice dominant win. You know, they didn't have the fully cleanest run either. I mean, they have 6 deaths on the board, but nonetheless, it was clean enough. And keep in mind, it wasn't their map pick.
Yeah, it's. I'm still wondering exactly what the plan was of No Healer here. I still feel like they wanted to do this very, very big pull where they ended up wiping. Maybe they just had a strategy that didn't work out, and then once it didn't work, everything just fell apart, and their whole plan was out of the window. Right, you are. So SunSky is going to take the sweep on the series, showing why they deserve that 2nd place seed, and here we are.
Yep, SunSky with an impressive display once again. The number 2 seed from China winning 2-0. I think that's actually 2-0s in both sides of the bracket. So the teams who have made it to that upper bracket grand finals are looking very, very strong. And honestly, the winner of that, of course, will qualify to the global finals. We're guaranteed to have one of these teams there. So impressive stuff from both SunSky and Skyline D. It's a bit of a tongue twister. Lots of S's there.
Yeah, it was just, I mean, that match, I mean, that round wasn't as close as the previous series. It seems like Team No Heal really took kind of a big risk that I guess didn't really pay off. They were looking pretty good at the start, I would say, but it started kind of just trying to, like, by the time they got the Spider Boss and Alasha, everything just kind of unraveled and fell apart, unfortunately. They just couldn't keep up with the healing.
Yeah, it's been really fascinating to follow this region along as well. We were expecting a lot of Windwalker monks, expecting a lot of Holy Paladins, but actually, when we look at the two teams that have made it to the upper bracket grand finals, they're running the Discipline Priest, the Restoration Druid, and we've even seen like some Warriors, some Affliction Warlocks. Nago, what do you think that has made these teams able to play it? Do you think they're just got something that the Western teams don't have, or do you just think that they probably aren't just playing those meta compositions for whatever reason?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't expect classes like that at all. I didn't expect a Disc Priest or a Resto Shaman or a lot of Warriors too. I was predicting a lot of Windwalker monks, a lot of Affliction Warlocks, Holy Paladin, Blood Decay. So I'm very surprised by the Chinese comps, but it seems to be working for them. And I think they just have their own meta, or maybe it's comfort picks that they're playing, but it seems to be working for them.
Yeah, it really does seem to be working them. So SunSky versus Skyline D, a match made in heaven. That will be our upper bracket final tomorrow. The winner will come to join us in Columbus, Ohio at the end of June for the global finals representing China. But of course, we will have that coming up tomorrow. Now, for the end of the day, we need to go to the elimination bracket. Lifeline's gone. Only one best of three separates any of these teams from their tournament exit. Rich will be joining you. I'll leave you in his capable hands as we continue with the Mythic Dungeon Invitational after this.